to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
Well, welcome everybody. And tonight it's once again a show on the World Hockey Association and the upcoming Whistler reunion. I'm Peter Young, and I'll be hosting in place of Glenn Dreyfus. I don't know why, because he did such a spectacular job the last time we had a show. But I do at least know everybody that's going to be on the show with us tonight, and we'll introduce them. And a couple will be joining us as we go along. The first one is a guy that was actually preceded me at CKY TV in Winnipeg, then went on to superstardom at CTV, and was the international play-by-play voice of CTV hockey for years and years, Olympics, World Championships, you name it, in the BC Sports Hall of Fame. And I worked with him a few times and worked beside him a couple of times. Bernie Pascal. Bernie, welcome from Vancouver. How are you?
Yeah, good, Peter. And hey, what a great concept. And we're all really looking forward to this WHA reunion. And,
yeah,
you know, the WHA took a lot of knocks in the early days, but it's amazing the number of people that were involved. You look at players and coaches and, as you mentioned, broadcasters. And, you know, I think it's an exciting time for hockey. And I'm glad you are to be commended for all the great work that you've done in organizing this. And there's not a better spot in Canada than Whistler to hold it.
And I can't take the credit. We have a committee of about 35 people led by Greg Bowden, and whose dad Norm was the original signee of the Winnipeg Jets. And so even though I end up on these podcasts more often, it's a big committee in Vancouver and all across, right as far south as West Palm Beach, Florida, that are helping us out. Some 35 people, including about 10 players, all the way from, Kim Claxon in Pittsburgh, Perry Miller here in Winnipeg, Dave Hansen in Pennsylvania as well. Guys from all across North America really helping out. Morris Lukowich in Calgary and numerous in Vancouver. Garth Rizzuto, what a character he was playing for the Winnipeg Jets early. Lyle Moffat on the island near you, so just a ton of guys that are helping out as far as this committee is concerned, and we're, extremely proud that you're on board. And we'll talk about, your first year with one of the teams, the early years of the WHA. But Eddie Hatum is with us as well, and Eddie, man, you were a Red Wing, and Hamilton and then Detroit. I grew up in Thunder Bay, and I don't know if you know, but because of Penty Lund and Fats Del Vecchio, everybody in Thunder Bay was a Red Wing fan. And so, and the original six guy, look at, there you are, haven't changed at all either. Man, what a great career you've had, and to play in that era with so many incredible stars. I can hardly wait to hear your stories about the Red Wings, but also your Chicago Cougar days and then their Vancouver Blazer days, because they were unbelievable. So thank you for joining us and for being part of this. I don't know if Jeff Curbison is with us yet. I'm just going to assume he's not until somebody tells me, he is. Jeff Curbison, there he is. So here we have the author of two incredible hockey books, bestsellers, by the way. One of which is called The Hotline, which obviously was about Hull, Hedberg, and Nielsen, and what the contribution was, and the other, Broken Ribs and Popcorn, which was about the the era of the Jets 1.0, we like to call them, the first time around, when it looked like finally the Jets were going to get over the hump and get a chance to advance into the Stanley Cup finals or semifinals, and Jamie McCowan happened to break Dale Hawerchuk's ribs and with a cross check, accidental, of course, and that's one of the reasons why the book is called Broken Ribs and Popcorn. I'll let Kirby explain the popcorn part of it. We're hoping that Tommy McVie can join us soon. He's trying to master the technology in Portland of getting on. But Bernie, let's start with you and the Vancouver Blazers. Tell us a little bit about those first years when you were the play-by-play voice of Vancouver.
Well, it was interesting, Peter, because we all were so excited to have the National Hockey League come to the West Coast. And in 1970, that happened with the Vancouver Canucks. And Tom Scallon and his group got the franchise, moved it into the Pacific Coliseum. It was exciting the first couple of years, but then crowds weren't as good as they thought they should be. And that's when the WHA came knocking in year 4 of the Canucks, and the Philadelphia Blazers weren't working out there. So Jim Pattison talked to Benny Hatskin and the WHA brass and got the franchise and moved it into the Pacific Coliseum to share the building with the NHL Vancouver Canucks. And the Canucks were averaging about 15,000 that first year that the Blazers were here, and the Blazers were around 10,000. So it was a real battle for the hockey dollar. And it was pretty exciting to have the option of seeing the Canucks or seeing the WHA Blazers. And the Blazers had the fiery Phil Watson. Johnny McKenzie was a playing coach. And that didn't work out too well with that combination. It wasn't until Andy Bathgate really took over the team as the head mentor that things seemed to start falling in place. They had Brian Campbell, who had a good NHL career, Danny Lawson, who was a prolific goal scorer, George Gardner in goal, who played for the original Vancouver Canucks, and of course our guest Eddie Hatum, who played for the first year Vancouver Canucks and also the first year Vancouver Blazers. So, there was a great following. And you talk about hockey personalities on the West Coast. We all talk this day and age, the Trevor Lindens, the Sedins, and you go back to the early days of the Vancouver Canucks. George Gardner was a very popular goaltender. Orland Kurtenbach was a popular figure. But, when you get right down to it, it's amazing the following. And I'm not saying that because he's here and he's a friend of mine. Ed Hatum had just an amazing following. And even to this day, I have gone around the province with Ed at various functions, charitable events, golf tournaments, and there's still prominent people out there. They want Eddie's autograph. They follow Eddie. Eddie, what's the reason for all that?
Well, maybe because I make so much money. So getting back to what Bernie's saying, when John McKenzie got hurt, they were paying me $300 a game. So if I didn't get on the ice, I wouldn't get the $300. But the fans loved me and they wanted me on the ice, so they would cheer for me. So then I could make my $300. As soon as he got, that's a true story. As soon as he got feeling good and he was back on, they had to let me go. That's with the Blazers. But with the Canucks, I had a separated shoulder in training camp. And that's when things in those days, I didn't heal like quite as well as I wanted to. It was a tough time in hockey in those days, and trying to break into the NHL because to get a winning team right away, it's pretty hard, So when you different combinations, and when I came back, I wasn't really productive when I got back in it.
Eddie, when you talk about the first year of the Vancouver Canucks, I remember in training camp, Hal Lako had put you with Orland Kurtenbach and Wayne Mackey, and that line was dynamite. I think you alone in the preseason had like 7 or 8 goals and then had the injury.
That's right. We had when they were giving out the sweaters, and they were throwing the sweaters around the room, and they gave me number 9, and I said, whoa, this number 9. Only the, Maurice Richard, Howe, who else wore 9?
Bobby Hull.
I said, Ed Hatum, number 9. I said, no, give me number 19. And then I said, no, that's taken. Dale Talon has 19. They want you to wear 9. And it was quite an honor to be able to put on that sweater.
Wow.
Ed, tell us the story. It's amazing. You're born in Lebanon. You left Lebanon with your family, your dad, I believe, and a couple of brothers at the age of 10 to come to Canada. You'd never skated. How did you get involved in hockey? Like, it's an amazing story that you'd never skated till you got to Canada at the age of 10, born in Lebanon, and then you go on to play not only in the NHL, but the WHA, and you're still active with the Vancouver Canuck alumni. Tell us how that all happened.
It's hard to believe, to think about it. 1957, we came to Canada. My dad was here with my oldest brother first. They came to Ottawa. And my dad, and he had 2 brothers in Ottawa, and they sold a farm, 350 acres, just almost in the outskirts, like almost in the, like a suburb, like Coquitlam is here, Bernie. Yeah. And they sold her for $15,000. And then they brought the rest of the family. There was 5 boys and 3 girls in the family. And they brought us to Ottawa. And I'll never forget, we were right across from a hockey rink, from a rink and a skating rink on the outside. You remember how they used to do it?
Yeah.
You play hockey on the inside, on the outside, you skate around. And I took a liking to it. I said, holy geez, well, how am I ever going to learn how to skate? So my one of my cousins had a pair of old rusty skates in the basement. I grabbed them and I cleaned them up and everything. I don't know if they were maybe 2 sizes, 3 sizes too big, but to me they were skates. So I learned how to skate, and I learned how to stop by falling into the snowbank, and then I grabbed a hockey stick, and all of a sudden, I really liked it, and I started to learn how to skate and play hockey for the school team, and then moved to Hamilton. And it's amazing. I wish, why wasn't I a doctor or something like that? Why did I take the sports that easy? I could do.
We'll call you a doctor if you like.
No, but I took the sports so easy, like golf, tennis, racquetball, squash. I played all the sports, and even at school, football. Like, I'd score the winning touchdown, and in sports I was great, but in school I was the shits.
Hey, look, it's pretty nice when you see some of the heroes behind us in the pictures. I've got Dale Howarchuk behind me, and I see, Eddie, you have a nice photo of Bernie Pascal behind you on the wall there. When he was a little bit more fit. Tommy McVie and Jeff Kerbison, 2 guys with us now, and Kirby, you had Tommy speak at the Jets reunion a couple of years ago, and everybody, I had to leave that one early, and everybody said that he was as good as any stand-up comedian you've ever heard. Is that true?
Pretty funny stuff, and I knew enough. I didn't know much about event planning, but I knew enough that if you have a microphone and Tommy in the same room, you give it to him. And so I asked him beforehand. I said, "You've got this dinner that everyone's going to, and we got to fill some time. So you want to talk?" And he said, "Well, you want me to talk for 5 minutes or an hour? Because if you want me to talk for an hour, I'll start right now. If you want me to talk for 5 minutes, planning." And he got up there and spoke for about 20 minutes. I think he told me that he got to 15 and people were still laughing, so he kept going. And it was super good. And so Tommy's going to do the same thing for us at the reunion in Whistler. And I know he's probably started planning a week ago.
I'm sure that it'll be like Will Smith, right? I mean, we have to be careful of what he says, and maybe have security in the front row. Tommy, have you got anything prepared for some of the guys you'll be speaking to? Because there's going to be some superstars there.
Yeah, they don't scare me.
That's Tommy.
The great Bobby Hull had to sit out again because he didn't get there. So if I did it to Bobby, he was the greatest left winger that ever played. none of these guys scare me. Nobody.
Okay, so
And it's kind of great to see Eddie too. I played with Eddie for a while, you know.
wow, where'd you play with Eddie?
Seattle. They wanted to get his game squared away, and I was playing left wing, and so they put him on the line with me, and I showed him how to play.
Oh, I'm sure that jump started his career. Must have been spectacular.
You got to hear this. I couldn't get on, you know. I was getting on, and Jeff was coming. So I ran to the next neighbors. He's working, but I picked his lock, and now I'm tuned in. So I'm good now. I'm here. I can talk all day if you want now.
Tommy, your career in the WHA was brief after Washington in the NHL, but not many people can say they were only there for a few months and walked away with the Avco Cup. That had to mean something to you.
It means more than anything to me. It was I needed something because I'd been fired there in Washington and had worked a long time trying to get that thing straight around. And then I was, like I tell everybody, I said I was standing on my front porch in Bowie, Maryland. I said, and just standing there, nothing. I wasn't doing anything. And the mailman started coming up my side of the street, and I started yelling at him just to talk to somebody. So the next day, then 2 days later, he started coming up on the other side of the street. You know, didn't want to talk to me. So anyway, I was just there, and I was out of hockey, and so Fergie brought me up to Winnipeg, and the rest is history because that's the very best team that I ever coached. They just needed a little push, and they took Quebec out in 4 straight, and then played Edmonton, and they had ended up 25 points ahead of the Jets, but our team was really, really good. We had good players. Suitcase, the Axe Smith did a wonder. I could talk about every player, and they were one of the reasons that we won. That's how good they were together. There's Ruskowski right there. He played the last game, and he stayed in with Bill Bozak in the training room all day, and they treated him. He didn't go out in the warm-up, and I was wondering if he was going to play, and when he finally came out on the ice, just when the game was going to start, took the first face off, set up the first 4 goals. I pulled him, and we won the game 7-3. And he was a big reason. I talked to Schoberg. I mean, he talked Kim Claxton. All those guys were. In fact, even Preston, and it just came when they finally got going in the playoffs. I mean, they were really ready to play, and they were really good. I mean, really, really good. And we didn't have any trouble winning because it was. And I hadn't coached a team like that before. But anyway, they were so good. That's the reason. And anyway, it gives me a tremendous memory because I wasn't doing too good. Until I listened to you guys with Eddie there, I said the only thing that kept me out of college was high school. So I got to tell you this story. I got to tell you this story here because it happened to me 2 days ago. I was going across the bridge. 205 bridge goes into Oregon, and it comes back and forth into Washington. I lived in Oregon when I played, and then I moved across there. So anyway, I'm going over the bridge, 205 bridge, going into Oregon, and all of a sudden I look in my rear view mirror, and there's a red light flashing. Comes right up alongside me, pulls me over. I don't know if he knew who I was or anything, probably not. So he says, comes up to the car, and he says, he said, I only got an hour left in my shift today. He said, I don't want to write a ticket. He says, but if you can tell me why you were speeding, and I haven't heard that story before, I won't give you a ticket. I said, okay. He said, go ahead. I said, 10 years ago, my wife ran away with a police officer. I said, today when I saw the red light flashing, I thought he was bringing her back.
I knew that was coming.
It's the story of my life.
Yeah.
I'm the Rodney Dangerfield of hockey. I am. Everything happens to me. It's just
I talked to Ruskowski on the weekend. They both said to say hi to you. I talked to Michael Gabati yesterday. He said to say hi to you.
Yeah.
Man, you had some talent on that team, and to go into Edmonton and win the first 2 games, Kirby.
Yeah.
That's you wrote about that in one of your books, and it was pretty impressive feat to go in and beat Gretzky in his home rink in those days.
They were an awesome team. They were really
Well,
good.
Gretzky would have only been, he was just a kid then. He was just 17.
18, 19, 18, yeah.
He was just 17 at the time. But
Oh,
the Jets, they were not favored to beat Edmonton. They'd finished way behind them. The Oilers had been flying high. And I remember they had some kind of absurd number of days in between the semifinal that they played against Quebec and the final. Like they're off for Tommy couldn't remember this. I'm sure it was 13 or 14 days or something dumb like that. And so they got up to the 2-0 lead, but they lost Ruskowski, I think, in game 4 to a shoulder injury. He had to sit out game 5. And if you talk to anybody on that team, and like Tommy's just saying, that because they lost game 5 and it wasn't close in Edmonton, and that Ruskowski really was the heart and soul of that team, and all the more remarkable because he was from Houston the year before, and the Houston guys and the Winnipeg guys didn't necessarily get along right away, and for him to be, Tommy said Bozak worked on him all day. Bozak worked on him all night, the previous night, to get him ready. And but of course, so Ruskowski, obviously he had help, and Axe Smith came in late in the season, was he arrived there by fluke because he was sitting around at home after Indianapolis had folded, and on Super Bowl Sunday, his wife had seen that the Jets had lost the night before, and she said, "Why don't you call up Winnipeg and see if they'll give you a tryout?" And just to keep her quiet, he called the Jets numbers. I don't know how he got it. This was before the internet, but he calls the Winnipeg Jets number in Winnipeg, and John Ferguson answered the phone on a Sunday. And he told him what he's doing, and he said, "Can I come for a tryout?" And Fergie said, "Well, I got 2 goalies. I really like one, and I don't like the other one, so I'll call you back." And he came back a little bit later, and Marcus Matson was the guy he liked. He wasn't a fan of Joe Daly. And then Smith arrived a few weeks later, hadn't played in a couple of months. He had gout, and he was overweight, and he was a bit of a disaster. But and he walked into the dressing room, and he said to everybody, "My record in Indy was 0 wins, 10 losses, and a tie. My goals against was 5.0, but don't worry, I'm not that good." And somehow he turned things around and helped run the table in the playoffs. And Tommy will attest to this part too. Then, and you couldn't have done it without Lars Erik Sjoberg, who was lost in the preseason to an Achilles injury during an exhibition game against St. Louis. And you don't lose arguably the best defenseman in WHA history, and he was certainly one of the, and you can say internationally at the time also. But I remember hearing from a few different people about how they heard this mysterious clip clop coming down the stairs in the Winnipeg Arena, and they hadn't heard that sound in a long time. And it was Sjoberg's clogs. And as soon as they knew that Shu was back in the building getting treatment, everybody knew that things were going to be a whole lot better. And he came back, and of course, he was a rock in the playoffs, and he got to carry the Avco Cup around the ice of the Winnipeg Arena for the 3rd time.
Man, he was a beauty, and the clogs were too. I remember Anders and Ulf convincing me that I should buy $5,000 worth of them, and they would sell easily in Winnipeg. And I think when I moved to Calgary, I gave away 4,900 of that worth of clogs that people use for firewood, I believe. But yeah, I remember that sound of wooden shoes coming down the hall. Shu had the boot cast on his leg when we played the Jets. I shouldn't say when the Jets played the Czech national team at the Winnipeg Arena, and Shu was my color commentator. And in those days, to get to what was the television booth, Bernie, you'd love this, you had to go over top of the catwalk at center ice and over top of the clock and down the other side. And then to get into the broadcast location, you actually had to climb down a steel ladder. And that got you into this little perch where you called the game from. So I can still see Shu with a boot cast on his leg because he was going to be my color commentator. And made his way down into the broadcast location. It was a network televised game, Bernie, one of the few that I got to do that you didn't do. And Shu was my color commentator. And every time the whistle would go, I would look to him, and he wouldn't volunteer anything. So I'd say, pretty good play, Shu. And his response every time was, "Yeah, Peter, good play." And that was it. That was about as much as I got out of Shu as the color commentator. It was a long broadcast. Bernie, let's get back to the Blazers. Anything weird happen in those first few years when, well, not few years, the time that you were the Blazer play-by-play guy?
Well, I think in the early day, the first season, they wanted to capitalize on the Blazers' name. So everything, and Eddie will attest to this, everything was related to the fire. They wanted plastic fire helmets. The players had to wear these after the game. The player of the game would put on a fireman's helmet. It was almost embarrassing, but they were trying to capitalize and get into the marketing ploy where people would capitalize on Vancouver Blazers. And after a goal was scored, when Eddie would score one of his spectacular goals, they had the fire siren. So it was an exciting time, and it didn't ring in favor of everybody, but they tried, and they made every effort of it the first year. It wasn't a successful year in terms of wins, although they did win their first game, beating the Winnipeg Jets. And then they went on and lost a few games. And then all magic happened, a big crowd when Gordie came in with Mark and Marty and Houston. And we had a massive crowd for that game. And that night, October 1973, at the Pacific Coliseum, was the night Mark Howe scored his first professional goal. And I remember talking to Mark, and after the game, we did interviews, and they were there for a couple of days, and he wanted to get a copy of that goal. But Peter, as you well know, that was the era of film, and you shot the games on film. And with the late television sports, you'd shoot only the first period of the game. So if it was scoreless after the first period, that's what you had for your highlight package. Although I think that night the game was 7-2, so there were 9 goals. But by the time the film was processed, edited, it was just showing scoring opportunities and saves. And people wondered, why aren't we showing Gordie Howe and setting up Mark Howe? But the good old film days, you were reliant and hopeful and fingers crossed that Eddie Hatum and Len Lundy and Mark Howe would score in the first period, but it didn't happen that often.
Well, and then the worst part is we graduated from film to videotape, and that was the big 2-inch reels. And so everybody asked me, why don't you still have a copy of the Jets 5-3-3 victory over the Russians, which at one time I did have on 2-inch tape. And you have to explain to them, well, you see, when you tape the game, you take the highlights out, and then the news department would use that same tape to tape over all the feeds that they got for the news department the next day. So consequently, history goes out the window, and nobody in the world has a copy of that tape other than the highlights that I happen to have. But it's just the way technology goes. I was lucky enough to as Kirby knows, the Heritage Classic was here a couple of years ago, and they were using some of my footage of Hull, Hedberg, and Nielsen, and they brought me into their setup. And I'm sure the Canucks is exactly the same, Bernie. But as I was in there, I said, "Wow, you've come a long way." And they said, "Well, we have every single shift of every single player who's ever touched the ice for the Winnipeg Jets."
Wow.
And so they would just type in Wheeler in a computer, and 4,000 shifts would come up. So technology has come a long way from those days when we
it's amazing, yeah. Well, that's what you watch a telecast of a hockey game or a baseball game or whatever. Now they just mention the player's name, and within seconds they have a highlight. They have Tommy McVie scoring his first goal in the WHA. Just
snap their fingers like that.
Hey, Tom, I was going to ask you about that. Growing up in Trail, British Columbia, You were inducted into the BC Hockey Hall of Fame. I know I was there that evening. It was a proud moment, very exciting time. But you went from trail and played your first junior year in the Saskatchewan Junior League in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. How did that happen? How did you play your minor hockey in trail?
Yeah, the kid hockey I played, and then I had moved. Also played. I played lacrosse too. I played lacrosse for, I guess, in Nanaimo. I played for about 10 years, and I played for Vancouver. I played, and then I think Scotty Milne. You remember Scotty?
Yes, Scotty and Estevan. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was there, but they had a ranger scout down in Vancouver, and we were just playing pickup around the forum there, and I didn't really have anywhere to go, and he came, and Kenny Elliott was going to be the new coach there, and so he drove over, and I was standing around with all my friends, and he said he was scared to get out of the car. So anyway, he did, and I asked me to go back there, and I played back there, and I played on a line with Orland Kurtenbach. He was a year or two younger than me, but just around 16, 17 years old, and you could tell he was going to be a good player, and so that's how I got there, and then I came out of there, and I was supposed to go to Ranger camp. It didn't happen, but I don't want to get into all that stuff, but I did get a job player in Toledo, Ohio Mercuries, and I played there and did okay, just okay. I had to go back the next year and scored quite a few goals, and so then thank God for Keith Allen came along, and they had to use they had to dress, I think it was three rookies or four rookies in the Western Hockey League, and Keith Allen didn't have enough. He played with me, and as it turned out, I was Guy Fielder was my idol, of course, and anyway, they were having some trouble with the right winger there going offside because, as you know, Fielder wanted the blue line, and so, and I knew I wasn't going to be a problem because I couldn't skate fast enough to go over offside, so I would just go up, follow the play up, and he was just brilliant, just brilliant. Game went into overtime. There was overtime that year, and I'd just be hanging around the net. He passed me the puck. I shot it in. I was shot in.
I don't think it was that easy, Tom. When you look back on some of you had 45 goals one year. You had 39 goals. You were a goal scorer, and it's unfortunate because the NHL at that period, as we all know, had 6 teams. If guys like you had the opportunity, imagine the 45 goals today, you'd get like $8 million. I mean, it's just, I mean, you get 20 goals at $6 million. So tell us about all that talent. You mentioned Guy Fielder. You mentioned you played with Eddie in the WHL, and all those great players that were knocking on the door. And I think one year in Portland, you had goaltenders like Jerry McNamara, you had Al Rollins, Bruce Gamble, all went on to star and mainstay in the NHL, but they needed that opportunity, and a lot of guys didn't get it. Why?
Well, the reason was in those years, Bernie, is when you signed with a team, they owned you till you died, and I know that some people had come knocking when I got traded to Portland, and I know that some people come around, but nothing ever happened. I think they had to pay a certain amount of money to get one player out of there. It never happened. I wanted to start out with Eddie because Eddie lived up there where I lived in Seattle, and just a great man. But in the morning, he was sort of grouchy, in the morning until he got in there, and he'd come down, and I'd be in that dressing room before everybody when I was playing, and I'd be fired up. And he says, "Take it easy. Just leave me alone. Take it easy." But when he went out on the ice, his whole personality changed, and he was really a good hockey player. So I don't know. Tell me about how he learned to skate with that, but he was really a good player. But anyway, getting back to myself, I guess I did score close to 400 or 500 goals. But anyway, we didn't get them. In fact, the teams would come out, and we would play them. The Boston Bruins would come, New York Rangers would come, Toronto Maple Leafs would come, and they'd come out, and we played there all the time. I played those teams all the time. And my claim to fame is I scored a goal on Terry Sawchuk. I scored a goal on Johnny Bauer, and I scored a goal on Harry Lumley. All Hall of Famers. So
Hall of Famers, yeah.
I only claim to play. Yeah.
They probably couldn't live with themselves after that, Tom.
No. Who is that guy? Well, Hy Zimmerman was a big writer, and he loved the Totems. And I wrote an article about me halfway through the year or something, and he said, young Tommy McVie is sure making a name for himself. He said the season is only maybe half, 2/3 through. He's already got 28 goals, and he set a record for 7 winning goals by a rookie. And he said he's really done well. And then I was reading the article, and I thought this is pretty cool. Right down at the bottom, there's one paragraph left. And he said, but don't get too excited. The Zamboni would get 20 playing with Field. So
Oh, man.
I was going to score goals. I went by the net one time, and he had the puck. He always had the puck. And I went by the net and swung away, and he never, ever yelled at me. He never scolded me. He just said, look, why would you go behind the net like that, swing behind the net? So what I want you to do is you go to the net, just go to the net when you can. And he said, I know the defense, I stand at the bottom. He said, I know you just did it now. Stop in front of the net, keep your stick down on the ice, and I'll find you. And then this Howard Zimmerman wrote another article, and he said, well, he's always around the net with his stick on the ice. He said, in fact, he's the most dangerous player in the Western Hockey League from the goal crease in.
Yeah.
They didn't even have blue paint then.
Yeah.
Hey, you were in Johnstown, right? Was that before? It became sort of
was,
for the
pretty
Chiefs?
well. I got I played, and I played in Phoenix got traded to LA. I got traded to Arizona, and then I got traded back to Seattle and played there. And so anyway, I was I did pretty good, I guess. But I'm not sure. I could hardly believe I could play at the level I was playing at. I mean, that was such a good league. I mean, geez, it was tough, and it was really good players. I mean, really good players, because it's only 6 teams in the National Hockey League, so it was good. So anyway, thank you for saying all those things. But I went to Toledo because I didn't have anywhere else to go. And Bob Lee, who was a player, he played over there, a ball player. He was going to Toledo, and he asked if I wanted to go, and he gave me a ride. And I drove the 2,800 miles. We went there, and Andy Mulligan was the owner, general manager, and it was okay, but he kept me there. And then the next year, I went back again. I didn't make the Western League. I went back, and I don't know what happened, but I think lacrosse really helped me a lot, because you got to be fired up when the ball's coming through a pick like that. You got to be alert, and your peripheral vision's got to be good. And I think that made me a goal scorer in the game. Might not be true, but it is for me. And anyway, I was playing in Toledo, and scored, I think, 35 goals the next year, and was the MVP on the hockey club. And it all changed in that 1 year. And I went to camp and told you about the first game I played in Western Hockey League. They're having trouble with a right winger, and they put me on right wing. And I played there, and that night I scored the winning goal in the overtime. And Bobby Pearl was the goaltender at that time, if you remember him. And it just went on from there. And so I came here. I got here in Portland, and one night I was playing with Ken Loffman and Gene Timachuk at the time. And so I was playing there, and scored and set a record there. I scored 5 goals in one game, which is still a record. So I guess I was pretty good around the net. I wasn't scared to go to the net.
Yeah, for
Tom,
sure.
it's amazing. You've made a profound impact on hockey at all levels. We could talk indefinitely about your playing career. Your coaching career was superb. I mean, you went on, you coached in Washington with the Capitals. There's the young boy there. And I know you talked about winning the WHA championship with the Winnipeg Jets and what that meant to you. And I know it was very special. And we'll be talking all about that up in Whistler in the fall. But I know something else that's very special to you because you've scouted for many years with the Boston Bruins. And to be from Trail, BC, to have the Stanley Cup awarded to Boston in Vancouver when they beat the Canucks in 2011. And you got the opportunity to have the Stanley Cup for a day. Your name is engraved on the Stanley Cup. I know that is very special to you as well.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about that. And people helped me along the way. And from that, I've helped a lot of, I've helped a lot of young players and never mentioned it. There's one player, I won't give it, I'll give you his name. It's Cody McLeod. He was playing in Portland Winterhawks. So he didn't get drafted. And I saw him play. He was okay, but he was always in the middle of stuff. He was all in the trouble and go to the net. So I called him. He was living in Portland. He's from Winnipeg, I think. And I said, "What are you going to do, young man?" He said, "I don't know. I didn't get drafted, so I don't know." I said, "Do you want to go to Boston with me?" And I was coaching in Boston at the time. And so, yeah, I guess he would say that. He came, and then he played. He was at camp, and he was a tough player. And he wasn't running around at training camp. He was just feeling his way around. And so anyway, we had players going to Providence. So I said to some people there, I said, "Why is this young man not going to Providence to play in the American League?" I said, "Well, we've already signed some guys. Not as good as this guy." I said, "Well, yeah, we think." I said, "No." So I called Craig Billington, and I said, "We got a young guy here at camp, Craig." I said, and he was like another one of my sons. And I said, "I'm going to tell you something right now. This young man is going to play in the National Hockey League." And he said, "Well, why?" I said, "They're not sending them down to Providence. They got enough guys there." So he goes up and he talks to Pierre, and he says, if he says this guy's going to play in the National League, shouldn't we send him a plane ticket?" Yeah, so he went there. He just finished his 13th year, played 12 years for the Colorado Avalanche, and now he's even down in the minor leagues as a player coach. So he's played 14 or 15 years of pro hockey, and every time he sees me, he almost starts crying because he had a hockey life. That's one guy.
Yeah. Tom, you didn't touch on the fact about what it meant to win the Stanley Cup, though. Tell me about that.
Okay. We were there. It was going, as you know, 7 games. We battled there. And so anyway, we went, we're going out to Vancouver, and I was so excited because I played a lot of hockey in the Forum just as a teenager, and I played lacrosse in the Forum, and I was around it, knew my way around all the time. And so anyway, they playing there was there and winning the Stanley Cup. And what happened was we were sitting upstairs, and I was sitting alongside Adam Creighton, and Adam Creighton, he was standing there, and everyone was when the final buzzer went, like everyone was jumping around it, and I must have went into shock or something. I was just sitting there like a zombie, and big Adam Creighton said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "I don't know. It's so hard to believe." I said, he said, "Well, are we going downstairs right now or not?" I said, "Yeah, we're going down." So I went down. The police didn't want to let us in for there, but we had buzzer. I just went out on the ice when Big Z was carrying the puck around, and Patrick Bergeron got the puck in the cart, and he carried it over. He gave it to me.
Wow.
Isn't that a great treat? Yeah, what a great moment. Yeah. Eddie, looking back, your early days in the WHA, you played with Chicago Cougars. Marcel Pronovost was your coach there. You were back with Rosaire Paymont, your former Canuck teammate. What about some fond memories of playing in Chicago of the WHA?
you know, there wasn't too many fond memories there. You know, I wasn't there a long time, but I think Rosie and Marcel Pronovo, and we had the coach. Not our coach. The GM was he was a baseball guy. You know, he was from a baseball. I forget his name. He was a general manager of a baseball team, and then he didn't know much about hockey. And we had players like Rod Zane, and I'm trying to think who else was Soupy Campbell. Oh, no, was Rosie.
No,
Was on our
I'll tell
team.
you. I'll tell you who was there was Hank Cahan.
Oh yes, Hank. Oh yeah, Hank. My roommate, Hank. Oh my God, what a treat that. Oh, Reggie Fleming. Oh, sorry, Reggie Fleming too.
Yes,
was on our team. Reggie Fleming, and that's when things weren't going good there for us. I ended up going to Seattle to play. I think Phil Maloney was down there. I think my girlfriend Frances gave him.
Was there,
yeah, and Tommy, you were there, and John Hanna, and a good bunch of guys that were there, and. The problem with Tommy and I, we didn't have enough coaches like they have now. They got 7 coaches on each team. Tommy and I needed that. And it's when I got to Seattle, it was so much different than being with the Cougars of World Hockey. At least I got a chance to play,
Exactly.
You weren't even really happy in Seattle. You want to play in the National League, but you were really a good teammate, really a good teammate.
Well, I can't say enough about you because you were such a great guy. You took me under your wing, and I really enjoyed meeting the guys, on that team. It was great boys.
Jim Whiskey came with you.
Jim Whiskey was there too.
Came with you.
God rest his soul. He's passed away.
Yeah.
Kirby, you've written 2 bestsellers. We know that. We don't want to give too much away, but a guy that Tommy knows really well is a player that you're now doing the research for, and I guess close to publishing your 3rd book about a guy who carried the Avco Cup with Tommy. You're muted.
Hear you, Jeff.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
This is my first Zoom call.
Yeah, right.
So this one's on Morris Lukowich, and he said to me when so I interviewed him for both the Hotline and Broken Ribs because he was with the Jets from 78 till 85, and he said, "Yeah, why don't you do a book on me?" I said, "Well, I don't know. What did you do?" And he said, "Well, I lived my dream of playing hockey with Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull, and then I had all this other bad stuff happen to me." I said, okay, well, I didn't know some of this stuff. So he was quite open about talking about the injuries that he had. He had a lot of concussions, one of which came from Dave Sumenko. Lukowich made the mistake of hitting Gretzky one time, and he went back to the Gretzky went down, and he went back to the bench, and he went out for his next shift, and Gretzky skated by him and said, "You're bleeping dead." And then he lined up for the next face-off, and then Glenn Sather whistled out and called the Oilers right winger off, put Semenko out there. And Lukowich thought, this isn't good. And then the puck dropped, and Semenko used his stick like a battle axe and gave Luke if Luke didn't put up his hands to protect himself, who knows what kind of damage there could have been. But so you can get concussed from getting hit by Dave Semenko. And so he was very open about the problems that led to him later in life. Sometimes he has a short attention span. He can't stay focused on some things. He had, and after he was out of the NHL in '85, he played a couple years in Europe. But once you're out of the club, you can't get back in, or it's very hard to get back into the club. And he was never offered a job as an assistant coach or anything like that. So he had lots of depression, and so he and the craziest story of them all is that when he was in Houston in his rookie year in I guess 75, 76, And in Houston, you go hunting because you're in Texas. So he was going to go out hunting with Rich Preston. He went out and he bought a nice rifle, and he got his van all ready to go for the next morning. And then when he woke up, his van had been broken into, and his gun had been taken, and a bunch of other stuff had been taken, but his golf clubs hadn't been taken. And so he bought another gun from Preston, but 30 years later, he got a phone call in Calgary, and it was a cop in New York, and they said, "We've got your gun," and he said, "I don't have a gun." He said, "Well, no, there's this shotgun, and the serial number matches you. You bought it in Houston in 1976. Oh yeah, that's my gun. Yeah, we found it in a pawn shop. Want it back? Okay, so they sent it back to him, and he took it out and shot some cans in a field somewhere, and the gun worked perfectly. But he had, like I said, he had some depression, and there were times when he started thinking, well, maybe things would just be easier if I ended things. And he started getting worried about the thoughts he was having. And so in a moment of clarity, he took all the shells and threw them out. So he has the gun, but he's got nothing to shoot out of it. So Luke is one of those. There are far too many stories of guys who have sustained similar injuries to him and have not come out the other side. But Luke has come out the other side. It's not perfect by any means. He's not a zillionaire. He still has some low moments, but he has found coping mechanisms to get out of them. He's got a day job, and he also has he coaches kids a lot of the time on weekends and at night, and he's got a company called Maximum Goal Scoring. He teaches kids how to score goals. So there's a lot of plus he's got lots of great stories. He met Gordie Howe as a 10-year-old kid. Gordie was signing autographs in the Saskatoon Eatons in the mall down Eatons or Sears, and nobody had advertised it. So they went in there. He and his brother went in to get a baseball glove, and they see this guy sitting at a desk just doodling. And Morris said to Brother Ed, "Is that Gordie Howe?" "Yeah, I think it is." So they went over there and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And Gordie said, "I'm just sitting here signing autographs, but no one's here because they didn't tell anybody." And so Luke and his brother talked to Gordie Howe for 45 minutes, signed an autograph for him, and that was he went home and he put that signed picture on his wall, and he would every night he would say his prayers before he went to bed as a little kid, and please God, let me play hockey with Gordie Howe. While you're at it, throw in Bobby Hull. And so sure enough, 10 years later, he lines up with the Houston Aeros, and he knew he had made it when, even though he wasn't playing much early in the season, when the lines would shift down and go on the ice, he would always try and move back into the middle of the bench so that his coach, Bill Dineen, could see him. You can't see your number or name way out the end of the bench. And sometimes he'd end up sitting beside Gordie. And he knew he had made it one time when a lot of players, when they are sweating the bench, they'll call for a train. They'll bring a towel over. They'll take their glove off and wipe their sweat off with their hand. Gordie wouldn't do that. He would just sit there and he would turn to the player beside him. So he turned to Luke and just rubbed his face on Luke's shoulder. And Luke thought, this is the greatest moment of my life. And he said to the trainer at the end of the game, you can't wash this jersey. So that was his kind of I've arrived moment. And of course, Gordie assisted on a few of his goals. So he's got lots of great stories about that. And if I can just tell one other quick one about Bobby Hull, Bobby, of course, played just a few games in the 78-79 season when all the Houston guys had come over. And Luke was there early for the first day of training camp. He's all ready to go. And then Bobby walked in. Of course, when Bobby walked in, there's a murmur, everyone, because Bobby walks in. And Luke was all ready to go. And he was watching. He'd always marveled at the shape that Gordie Howe was in, because Gordie had a muscle that went from here straight down to his shoulders. And he got that from carrying cement bags in the off season in Detroit. Sorry, he'd be doing this with the Red Wings, but he'd do this in Saskatoon. And so Luke is watching Hull just get ready, takes his shirt off, and he sees, Hull had one of the most famous physiques in the world back then. I mean, there was that famous picture of him pitching hay from behind, and he's just ripped like crazy. And so Luke is gawking at Bobby Hull in the dressing room, and Hull looks up and catches Luke's eye, and Luke is horrified, and he looked down for what he thought was enough time to that Bobby looked away, and then he looked back up after like 10 seconds, and Bobby was still looking at him. And so Luke was, of course, embarrassed, and he had to go over and say to Bobby, like, "Holy smokes, Bobby! Like I've seen pictures of you, but like, my God, you're ripped." So you don't hear those stories very often happening in a 1970s or 80s locker room. But that was Luke's introduction to the Bobby Hull fan club.
Man, that book is going to be unbelievable if it's got stories like that. Luke is pretty clear about the head injuries and how it's affected his life. And you touched upon something, though, that I hope you touch upon in the book. He comes from a pretty famous family. As you know, the Lukowich family in curling is famous all over Canada. And his young daughter, I think she's like 17, Zoe, she's going to be like the next superstar. She's won all kinds of talent shows. She sings with young Canadians, and she and Eva were just down in the Caribbean, and somebody got her up on stage, and wasn't too long before every musician on the stage dropped their jaw because of how good she is. So pretty impressive family. I want both of you guys, before we get back to Eddie and Bernie, to go through something for me. Tommy first. It's no secret that the Jets, when you came there, were floundering a little bit. They were a fourth place team and probably were close to maybe not even making the playoffs. What happened in that dressing room that changed the moment you got there?
Well, I just went in there, and Fergie was there with me, and he said, so I didn't go in walking in and say there's a new sheriff in town. But anyway, I did say it. And so actually I was watching them just skating and maybe taking some shots. I couldn't believe the talent that I was looking at, because I'm not going to knock Washington at all. We got all those players in the draft, and they were okay. You know, Sharon was good. There were some good players, but there was like the defensemen were good. I said the lines were good. Guys like Bill Lasuk, like, he never stopped working. He just, from the morning he went on the ice all day, every shift he's working. A guy, and Peter Sullivan, and of course Nielsen. They were running a 2-on-1 drill, and they were actually like the Harlem Globetrotters, going down the ice and moving the puck and kicking it there. And Joe Daly would get so mad at them because they pretended they were shooting and they'd pass it and everything. I thought, these guys really are good. Like, they're really good. But they seemed to run out of gas in a hurry, and I guess they called for the right guy. They called for me, and I went in there. And I'm telling you, this story went out with Jacques Demare. Good guy. But anyway, he was coaching Quebec at the time. And so we were playing them, and of course, we were going to play them in the playoffs. And I'll tell you, so they were, the team then was just like a machine. They were playing, like all the lines were going. So anyway, I just said the players, I think it was probably the third game. They got in the third game in Winnipeg. So I called the guys over by the box, and I said, now look, when that team comes in here today, what they're going to do, they're all going to come out in their body, take a look what's going on in their street clothes, and then go. I said, so what I want you to do, as soon as they come into the building, I'm not going to blow any whistle on doing. I'm just standing over here. You go down to go down to the end of the rink and the other end, both ends. And I said, go into your drill about blue line back, red line back, and just run yourself through that. And they're going two at a time. I never said anything. I was standing there, and I mean, they were just like, when they stop at center, they're shooting snow and everything. I never coached guys like that before, ever. And I coached a long time. So anyway, now we went on. We beat them bad, really bad. So anyway, it went on and it went bad. And Jacques Demers, bless his heart, he said, we lost the Avco Cup when we went and watched the Winnipeg Jets practice. It was sort of a setup.
Wow.
Wow.
That's heavy stuff. Yeah.
Really something.
Hey, Kirby, you have your thoughts on what changed, because we sat through the first part of that season. What changed when Tommy got there?
Well, I think it was a combination of that and Terry Ruskowski and Lars-Erik Sjoberg brokering a truce between the two factions, the Houston players and the Jets players. So I know early in the season, and let's not forget that the 7 or so Houston guys, so Morris Lukowich and Terry Ruskowski and Scott Campbell and Rich Preston and Steve West, John Gray and Paul Trebenchi, they didn't want to go there. The last place they wanted to go was Winnipeg because they hated the Jets. And so it was kind of an awkward training camp because nobody wanted to be there. And so when the Jets would lose a game early in the season, the Winnipeg guys would blame the Houston guys, and the Houston guys would blame the Winnipeg guys. And on the road, they'd go their separate ways after a game, out for a beer. And so that you're not going to win a whole lot of games when you hate the other guys in the dressing room. And so in addition to Tommy coming there, Shu and Roscoe brokered a truce, and everybody got on the same page. And the combination with the drill sergeant there, and they got fitter than everybody else, and it just worked. And so it was a unique set of circumstances, and you can look back on that season and think, well, if they didn't have that truce, and if Shu didn't come back, and if Ruskowski didn't have that injury that he came back from, all these different things. Sorry, and if Bobby Hulls had kept playing, Morris Lukowich wouldn't have been on the power play as much because Bobby stayed out there for 2 minutes at a time. He wouldn't have scored 65 goals. Who knows what? Maybe the Jets wouldn't have kept Lukowich when they would merge into the NHL. So so many different things had to happen in order for that team to first gel and then come together to beat the Oilers. If you had speculated on that before the season started, nobody would have believed you.
And the
Interesting, Jeff.
goaltending.
I want to get back to Eddie for a moment. We talk about hockey development and playing junior hockey, and we talked to Tommy about playing in Prince Albert, and one of his teammates was Orland Kurtenbach, and I know back in the 60s when the Hamilton Red Wing games were a hot commodity in the Toronto market because the good broadcaster Norm Marshall used to call the play-by-play on CHCH TV, and that's where you played 4 years of junior hockey, Ed, and some fond memories I know there because you had some outstanding coaches. I think Rudy Pillis was a coach. 1 year you had Eddie Bush. The great players there, you had Nick Libet as teammates, you had Danny Lawson, and so many others. What are some of your memories of playing junior hockey in those good old Hamilton Red Wing days?
Oh, the Hamilton Barton Arena, where the pillars, were the way it was when guys were skating down the ice. You try to get them between the pillar so they can't. You put your stick there so they can't get by you, which was really mean in those days. We owned that rink, like Montreal Canadian junior team would come there with Cornway and all these great hockey players, Lemaire, all like you wouldn't believe it. Like we beat them when they come to Hamilton. When we go to Montreal, they beat the heck out of us in Montreal. But we knew how to win games at Montreal Forum. And I'll never forget, the first coach I had was Danny Lewicki, great hockey player. And then the next year it was Rudy Pillis, and then Eddie Bush the last 2 years. My best memories of that Barton Street Arena, we had great players like Peter Mahavlage and Bart Crashley, Nick Libet, Sandy Snow, Danny Lawson, Ronald Leclerc. Geez, we had a great team. Ron Harris, and a lot of guys went on and on and they won Memorial Cup before I got there with Pitt Martin and Paul Henderson. I think was that 63, Bernie? I'm not sure. I got there in '64, but they won the Memorial Cup with Eddie Bush. Yeah, anyway, it was a great hockey town, and those junior days you never forget. You know, so many guys that are out there that you wish you could see them, like we're doing right now. I mean, this is amazing. You talk about like we used to play the Detroit Red Wings once a year. They'd come into town, and it's funny, Bernie. I had a fan club in Hamilton those days, and these kids would hand out these when Detroit comes to town. They'd hand me these Ed Hatum fan club, and would you believe it? Gordie Howe, Vecchio, and all those guys were on my fan club because they handed them these cards, and I'll never forget. Honest, can you believe that? And you're talking about Gordie Howe. My favorite moment in hockey is when I got called up from Fort Worth to Detroit and scored my first NHL goal. Gordie Howe is just an amazing human being. I mean, he'd hit you in practice, like he'd hit you in the back of the skate with his stick, and you turn around and you don't know who's doing it. And when he does it, you say sorry to him. He's the guy that hits you, and I'm saying sorry to you. You can't, when Gordie, you can't say too much to him. He was like, he was just an unbelievable person. And after I scored my first NHL goal, and my second goal was against the Axe, Gary Smith, Bernie, as you remember. He was playing in Oakland then. And after the game, I came back and we're undressing, and there was an envelope at my seat. And it was an envelope with a plane ticket back to Fort Worth because Bruce McGregor or Floyd Smith were hurt, and they mended, and now I have to go back to play in CHL, Central Hockey League, with our Fort Worth Wings. And Gordie Howe says, "What's that?" I said, "Well, this is my plane ticket. I'm going back." He says, "Jesus, I'll never forget this. It made me feel so good." He said, "God, we need the young legs." When he said that to me, it made me feel on top of the world, honest to God. I mean, he was such a great, great person.
Well, I'm sure Smitty's watching tonight. I'm sure Gary Smith's watching tonight in San Diego because he watches this show regularly. And you talked about scoring on him. Now, that was the easy goal, scoring on Smitty. Who did you score your first NHL? Who did you score your first NHL goal on?
My gosh, I'll never forget this one. Peter Stankowski was my centerman, and I heard somebody talking about Thunder Bay a minute ago. Was it Peter talking about Thunder Bay?
Yeah, it's me. That's where I'm from. Yeah.
Okay. Dean Prentice was my left winger, and I'm the right winger, and Pete Stankowski. I'll never forget the play. We're playing against New York Rangers. Reggie Fleming is my Czech, and I think it was maybe it was Reggie's that he's at the end of his career. I'll never forget. We break out of our end. I think Kent Douglas passes the puck up to Stankowski. Stankowski over to Prentice, and Prentice over to me. And then by the time I hit the blue line, I was in full stride, and Reggie Fleming, like, he couldn't skate with me in those days. When I got to the blue line, I took a shot on Ed Jockerman, a slap shot from almost the blue line, about 6 inches off the ice. And I'll never forget it. I was standing there with my hands in the air. You could hear a pin drop. I don't know what happens to you when you score your first NHL goal. That was me standing there, and the guys were hugging me. You could hear a pin drop, and that was my first NHL goal against Ed Jockerman.
Wow.
Special moment. Special moment, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
How good is that?
Well, we're gonna hear a lot of
many goals.
No, I'm just saying we're going to hear a lot of those stories and more.
Oh, can you imagine,
Peter, up in Whistler, and Eddie's got a million of them.
Well, and now it's amazing. It's the second time we've done this show with Glenn and Paul, and the first time we had Roscoe and Luke and Rick Smith on, and there's some of the guys, for example, that are going to be that have already committed. When you look at that, it's a who's who. Alton White, the first black player to ever play in the WHA, we're honoring him. Kent Nielsen, who with his wife Helen Alfredson from the LPGA Tour, they're hosting the golf event. Chipper, of course, Manitoba boy. Anders Clacker's going to be on this show in a couple of weeks Freddie O'Donnell, who is best buddies with Smitty. They're outdoor on their skates practicing the other day. I don't know what for. We're not going to have a game, I don't think. Jerry Adrowski, who played down in San Diego for a while. Luke, Perry Miller, Roscoe, Ulf and Anders, and Bobby all there. Alec Tidy, former Mariner, will be there. Ronnie Graham just booked his hotel room the other day, goalie for Houston. Tommy, of course, is going to be speaking. And Frankie, never been beaten. He's got like 4 or 5 nicknames, but he was at the 99 reunion we had in Windsor. And Gordie was there. Mark and Marty were there. Bobby was there. But Frankie was the guy that held court and had probably the best stories. Andre Lacroix, we're honoring, of course, the leading scorer in the league, and the original Jet, Normie Bowden. So those are just some of the guys that will be there. But I guess you can imagine Eddie and Tommy, the guys that played the game. A lot of the BS that'll be going around when there's guys sitting, everything that happened 50 years ago will be magnified a little bit.
Wow, what a group you got up. My God, all those names you just mentioned. Imagine we see each other after all these years. My goodness, what a party.
Yeah, I guess the stories will be legendary.
Yeah.
And maybe exaggerated.
Well, the stories get better every year. Yes, yeah.
It's got 50 years to prove it.
Yeah. Tell you an area of talking about Gary Smith.
Tommy, who do you want to see there?
About Gary Smith.
Yeah.
I got a letter in the off season, coach in Washington at the time, and so it was from him, personal, that he needed a job. He needed to go, and so I talked to Max, and I said, what I'd like to do is go out there to the Mile High City in Tahoe. That's where he lived, and so I did. I went out there and I saw him, and he was really big, like probably 250. It's a big guy, but he's 250. And anyway, I went there and I was into the running, and the air was thin up there, and I was doing some running on elevation, and I know that the Olympic team trained there before they went to Brazil or somewhere, and I could tell the difference. He was running. So anyway, we got a weight on him on body fat and everything, and I said, you're going to have to come into camp at 214 pounds. And so anyway, he came, we were training in Hershey, and I was with him, and I took him down and weighed him. I did all that training with him. I stayed out there and then took him up and went in there, and he come in, he looked like a new man. He weighed 212 pounds. He was just tremendous shape, and he did a good job for us. And he's the reason, one of the big reasons we won the Avco. He stood on his head against one of the great teams in that league, and he was awesome.
Kirby, you're been around the committee, of course, from day one when we tried to put this together in the States and couldn't do so. What kind of response are you getting from the players you talk to about coming to Whistler?
Well, I've sent notes out to the two teams I had reunions with here. So the 77, 78 team and the 78, 79 team. Mm-hmm. And the response I'm getting is really good. They're hoping it could be something, if it's anything like the reunions that they had here with just their own teams, they're going to love it. And so I know that a lot of these guys who haven't seen each other, there's Bill and Joe, a lot of these guys who haven't seen each other in 40 years, like some of the Jets would walk into the Hotel Fort Garry, and they hadn't seen each other since the parade on Portage Avenue 40 years earlier. And it took them about 6 seconds until they were telling the same old jokes and lies. And there we go, right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that kind of friendship runs deep. And some that weren't sure about it, they thought, well, I guess maybe I'll come. And everybody had a great time. They all were. I think they all really appreciated the fact that they got to turn back the clock and relive a bunch of memories. And I think these Jets are looking forward to doing it not just with their teammates, but because it's 40 and 50 years now. As Perry Miller says, everybody likes each other now. So you could have had a war with these guys back in the mid '70s, and now everyone's the brotherhood. And so, especially if you are a member of the Rebel League, it's kind of almost like a secret handshake, and everyone was in it together because they were taking on the NHL. And so I know that they're all the response I've got is very positive, and they're all looking forward to it, and swapping stories with teammates and opponents alike.
Yeah, and you look at Anders there with the full head of hair. Of course, he's, as you know, you talked to him the other day. He's had a bit of a battle, but you think he's coming out on the right side of it.
Anders is fighting some kind of blood cancer, but he says he's in the best medical hands. He says it's treatable. He's feeling great, and he has every intention of being in Canada this fall.
Well, him fighting blood cancer. I went through lymphoma and lost my spleen a few years ago. So one of our charities is the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of British Columbia. Ryan O'Quinn doing a spectacular job helping us out there, and Jeff Salmanis, Greg Bowden, Tom Pederit, all the guys that are helping out in Vancouver. It's an amazing group of people. Timmy Koshel up in Whistler, and like I said earlier, about 35 people on the committee, and it's pretty encouraging the way some of the players like Rick Smith, have jumped in. Kim Claxton, unbelievably jumping on board and helping out. And I guess the best way is just word of mouth. Everybody phoning anybody. So Eddie, you know a lot of the guys. I guess you probably still go out and hang with the Vancouver alumni, the Canucks alumni. I know Bernie's part of that alumni. Normie Bowden now part of that alumni. You're going to talk it up a little bit, Eddie, and see what you can do?
Of course. I didn't know this was going on till Bernie got in touch with my wife, Frances, here, and it's an honor. I will put the names out there, and be glad to get the guys up there. That's going to be one heck of an evening.
One of the things we were thinking of having like an old timers game on this Sunday, the last day, like WHA versus the rock and rollers or the musicians that are around everything. And then somebody the other day said, "Are you nuts? We're going to drag equipment all the way up there and put 75, 80-year-old guys on the ice." So one of the things we're going to do instead is have a clinic with the boys and girls, the youth hockey of Squamish and Whistler. And hopefully some of you guys can go out there, shake hands, help with drills. We're counting on guys who do this all the time, like Morris Lukowich and Richie Preston, Dave Babbage. Some of the NHL guys from Vancouver said they would come up and help out. So, anything we can do to bring back some hockey skill level to the kids of Squamish and Whistler, we're going to try to do. And then there's 3 days of what we're going to call a memorabilia show or fan palooza, something like that is taking place at the Racket Club. And that will be basically a trade show, not a trade show, but a memorabilia show, artworks, things like that, autograph sessions. And once again, somebody said, do you think people would mind if we asked for their autograph? I think most guys would be honored to still be asked for an autograph if somebody even remembers who you guys are by then. Is that true, Tommy and Ed?
Oh, geez. Like we just had at a Winterhawk game just last week, and I set it up for them. And there was about 20 of those players that played on all those winning teams. And so I did that and talked to them. And so they had I went to the Winterhawks and came back, and they had a buck night, and they brought us out on the last time there was 20. There's only 8 of us left, but we went out there, and the people went crazy. And so they had up on the main concourse, they had tables set up, and after the first period, 8 of us went up there and started signing autographs. The lineup got bigger, and then all of a sudden, the second period was going to say, we kept up there, signed that. Third period, all of that. We never did go down and see the ice. 8 guys sat there and signed autographs for 3 of a whole game. It was amazing. And people remembering things that, I don't know how they could remember that speaking of this thing, all this, what's not to love about this?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And the day of golf, I would think more guys golf than still skate from this age group. And, it's kind of an honor. Kent and his wife are going to be the hosts, and it's at Chateau Whistler, one of the most beautiful golf courses in the world. And, Kent is either a one handicap or a scratch player himself. But he can't hit it as far as his wife, who won a couple of majors on the LPGA tour. So it'll be kind of fun just to hang with those two and just swap golf stories, because I'm sure she's got a couple of incredible ones. Bernie, you going to bring your sticks or what?
Yeah, I guess we will. And I'll caddy for Eddie, because I've watched Eddie golf, and he's pretty good at it. Yeah.
Well, why is it that most hockey players are always pretty good golfers? I mean, I don't know whether it's the swing mechanism or whatever, but of all the sports, it seems that hockey players end up being pretty fair golfers.
That's because they have to work in summertime.
Yeah,
that's right. Like Tommy
Go
ahead.
I just say all the guys golf because they've got summers off and they get together, and what a great thing to do. And years ago, you had to go to work.
And the Leafs will have an early chance to get on the golf course, or what are your predictions, you guys? That seems to be the joke of the day again. Yeah. What's going to happen with the Leafs? They play like Stanley Cup champions until the playoffs start.
It's true. I hope they turn it around this year. But anyway, like Tommy always had good hands around the net, like he was saying a little while ago. He always had good hands around the net. That's why he scored so many goals. And between Bernie and I think we'll put the name out there, Peter. We'll get the name out there. We'll try to get as many guys up there. Get Turnsey, get Monahan up there, Babbage. See if we can get Lume up there. And what do you think, Bernie? I think we can round up some people.
Oh, I think so. And Garth Rizzuto and Alex Tidy are all excited about joining in the group. And I saw Alex on this show a few months back, and he was outstanding. Yeah.
And Lyle Moffat, of course, just lives up the coast from you there. He's not even that far up up in Victoria, and he's definitely signed on today. So Richard Brodeur is on the island. We're hoping that he comes over. BJ McDonald skates with the Canucks old timers. Just tons of guys.
Well, it's a very, very active group, Peter. And as Eddie says, once the word gets out, I think there'll be everyone jumping on the bandwagon, and we're looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun.
You know what? The other thing we haven't touched upon is it's the 50th anniversary, actually to the same weekend, of Puck Drop in the WHA, but it's also the 45th anniversary of the movie Slapshot. And on the Saturday night of the event, on the Friday night after the golf tournament, we're having a screening of the movie Slapshot at Longhorn Saloon. And at that, Dave Hansen, Jeff Carlson will be there, and about 6 members of the actual cast of the movie. We don't know if Bruce Boudreau will be there, but he was in the movie. And so can you imagine all those guys again putting on the foil, and just the stories that'll be going around at that event. That's going to be one of the real fun parts of the whole weekend.
Oh, that's great. What a job you guys have done, Peter. This is amazing.
Tommy, you were in Johnstown though. And was that was before Hansen got there, right? And then
it was before, and they called my buddy Connie Madigan, and he was in the movie too. But he had a month ago. He had a heart attack, but he's fine. Tough to kill.
Thunder Bay guy, another Thunder Bay guy.
Yeah, so he's. But I coached down in Johnstown. That was my first. I had to be a playing coach. My first year out of professional hockey.
Yeah.
Well, do give Connie Madigan our regards, because he was a mainstay in the WHL. And when he came to Vancouver, guys kept their heads up when he was in the building against the Western League Canucks, that's for sure.
You know, I was looking at he's going to go into the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame.
Well, you two guys are already in the Hall of Fame, Bernie and Tommy, and Kirby's in the Writers Hall of Fame in my mind.
Yes.
Eddie, you and I are still looking for something.
Yeah, you're over how great this has been.
We're gonna ask Glenn to come back in now, and thank you, Paul Patsku, for giving us this opportunity to talk about the WHA, to talk about the reunion, to talk about the Slapshot reunion, and to hear some of the incredible stories and magnify that by about 500 when we get all these guys in Whistler. We're hoping for 100 players, and most players probably will bring their wives. Some will bring their adult children, so it won't be too long before we have a pretty good crowd up there. And just Eddie, so you know, when you're talking to the guys, every team that had a team in the WHA, unless it was somebody that just had one for a heartbeat, will have a certain designated hospitality bar. Like there's 16 bars that Gibbons in Whistler control, and each bar will be basically like you go to the Olympics and there's Canada House. Well, there'll be Blazers House, there'll be Arrows House, there'll be Jets House. So there'll be opportunity for the guys to get together and with their ex-teammates, and then just flit around from everything's walking distance in Whistler. And so, the camaraderie, I think, is going to be something that's pretty spectacular. So thank you, Paul Patsku, for giving us this opportunity. And Glenn, just I'll explain to the guys what happens now. If you have to go, fine. Thank you so much for being here. But Glenn will now host like an after-hours show where fans can actually ask questions of you. Is that the idea, Glenn?
There is a YouTube link that Paul sends out. Peter, if you'll indulge me for a minute before we close this broadcast. So I collect the photos, and we didn't get a chance to show some of the Bernie Pascal photos.
Pascal.
Wow.
That's great.
Look at the hair.
Yeah. Same hair, too.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, how about that?
Howie.
Two of the greatest broadcasters in CTV history.
Yeah, we worked well together.
Man.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Bernie. Look at the hair on Bernie.
If you will, and I read about Eddie, he had two nicknames that I found. One was Fast Eddie.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right. The other one was Sock.
No, it was remember the TV show? Yeah.
Yeah, tell him, Bernie.
No, I'm just saying that the old TV show, and it was Sock It to Him.
Oh yeah.
So they capitalized on that, and it was Eddie Sock It to Him. Yeah.
Did I miss any nicknames, Eddie?
No, but the one Bernie's talking about, Sock It to Him, is, you remember was it Laughing or?
Yes.
Laughing?
Yeah, Gordie Howe, wasn't it?
Yes.
No, Cheryl. It was the Spanish girl named Cheryl. Remember her, Cheryl? She was.
Yeah.
And she used to shake and go like this, say, "Sock it to me, sock it to me, sock it to me."
Right.
And that's I got that name in Detroit, Sock It to Him. So that's what it was.
Because of your dancing ability or your pugilistic ability?
I guess in junior I was a little bit of a mean guy. Not that mean. I didn't go around looking for fights, but I could hold my own, I guess. And then sock it to me, kind of held on with me.
Tommy, stay away from cop cars, because that's maybe the best story I heard tonight.
Well,
those stories about Tom McVie.
Let me take a moment, if you will indulge me.
Sure.
Because I grew up in Maryland as a Washington Capitals fan, and one of the great untold seasons in the history of the Washington Capitals is their 1976-77 season. As Tommy said, the team won 19 of its first 160 games. And Tom became coach midway through the second season. And what he did in the third season of the franchise, I still have such warm memories about. because his team won 24 games that year, more than the first season and the second season combined. And I mean, there was nothing that Tommy wouldn't try. He had practices at 6 a.m. He had practices at 10 at night. He had 2-hour practices. In one game in Montreal, he had both goaltenders on shifts because facing that Canadiens team that lost only 8 games, he said it was too much for any one goalie to face. Now, he couldn't play them both at the same time, but still, what innovations. And the Canadiens were so impressed with the job that the Capitals had done, winning 24 games, that at the end of the final game of the season, some masochist had decided that the Canadiens should be in the same division with the expansion Capitals. So they played all the time. So the Capitals lose the game by 1 goal. The Canadiens, their 60th win of the season. As the players are going off the ice, they turn around, they start engaging in a handshake line. And I don't know of any game that's a non-event regular season game in NHL history where the two teams line up for handshakes. And that was one of the great coaching jobs I maintain in NHL history. And Tommy finished second in the Jack Adams voting to Scotty Bowman. So, Tommy, I want to say thank you for some just terrific memories that almost no one else remembers except maybe you and me. But I thought that was a great season for a team that lost more than half its games.
If I thought things were that good, I'd gone and see Mr. Poland for a raise. But anyway, I got to tell you, of course, they're having the Bobby McCammon thing, celebration of his life in Vancouver. I guess you all know about that. And I've been thinking about him, and he's gone now. But anyway, I got to tell you this story. I was coaching in Maine, the Maine Mariners, good franchise, really good. And so my wife couldn't come with the boys, and so they were in Portland, Oregon, and went to school. So I was there, and I lived in the Holiday Inn, room 424, for 5 years. So anyway, the hotel, I was in room 424, and the rink was right across the street. So Bobby McCammon told this story about Tom McVie. He said, he said he's always trying to find different ways of penalty killing and power play. He said, he said one day they were working on the highway right in front of the ring. It wasn't the highway, it was the main street. And so they had all these barrels out. They had the barrels out so people could go around the traffic. And he said, so Tom McVie goes down, he's talking to the head guy. They all know who he is. He says, do you think I can have 4 of those barrels there just for a couple hours? Sure, carry them in there. So he carries them into the rink. There's no one there at the time, and I put them on where the penalty killers stand. So I go in the dressing room. The guys are there. I went to Steve Taylor. We got all these guys. I said, now we're going to try something today because the power play sucks. This penalty killing sucks. So what I want you to do in group 5 at a time, you go down, you skate down, you move the puck around, and those are the barrel. They're the defensive guys. You move the puck around, go back to the point, and then shoot the puck and just go like that. I said, Stevie, I said, now what I want you to do is I'm going to get off the ice and just go sit back in my office and see how things go. Just move the puck around. And so anyway, Stevie, because you're 5 minutes later, now 10 minutes later, he comes in. He says, you better get up there now. I said, well, now what happened? He said, the barrels are winning 2-0.
Oh man, Bobby McCammon, Kenora, Ontario, played Fort William Canadiens, another Thunder Bay guy in my books.
Great man.
Yeah.
Peter, anything else before we say so long for this broadcast?
I think we were good to go, and we thank everybody for their time. And if you can stick around and ask, if you've got any fans in queue that want to ask Glenn,
that's a different link than this program.
Okay.
But we discuss that once we end this one, which we're going to do right now. So
sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was a blast and went by like in 10 minutes. Good night, everybody.